What's up, everybody, and welcome to an emergency post-trade deadline Steelers Sanctuary podcast. I'm your host, Dave Rivero from SteelersSanctuary.com. I'm flying solo today. My partner, David Korup, couldn't make it. I felt I had to put one of these out, and it was a big trade deadline yesterday. Probably the most active the Steelers have ever been at the trade deadline. Excuse me. Two big trades. Well, two medium trades anyway. I have a theory, an overall theory of what happened yesterday. It's kind of confusing. The Steelers brought a player in and traded a player away. Are they buyers? Are they sellers? I have a theory about that. We'll get to that at the end of the podcast. For now, let's go over the actual deals. Let's start with William Jackson first. Well, Omar Khan brought our boy home after 6 years. We all know the story of the 2016 draft. The Steelers were set to draft William Jackson, one pick away, and the Cincinnati Bengals stepped in, took William Jackson, and the rest is history. We know what happened. They panicked, drafted Artie Burns. He turned out to be a disaster. Ironically, I think he finished his career in Chicago after the Steelers cut him. I'm not even sure he's in the league anymore. So Omar Khan brings our boy back. He's listen, this is a no-brainer. They swapped 2025 6th and 7th round picks. The Steelers sent them their 6th, got the Chicago Bears 7th back for a starting caliber NFL corner. I mean, this is a no-brainer. I mean, William Jackson's been trying to get out of Washington all season. There's been some reports of a back injury. We're not sure. Is he just saying that to kind of facilitate a trade, or is it serious? We don't know. I think if the Steelers traded for him, they'd be pretty sure they could use him right away, and there was no back injury there, or nothing serious anyway. The Steelers are only on the hook for about a prorated $5 million left on his contract this season. So probably $2.5 to $3 million at the most for 2022. Then it's essentially a rent-to-own type deal. I mean, he's due roughly $12 million next season. There's a $2.5 million roster bonus in March where the Steelers are really going to have to make a decision on whether they want to keep William Jackson. Hey, if he plays really well this season for them, next year, $12 million is a bargain for a number one corner. Let's be honest. If he doesn't play well, they can cut him. No dead cap. You gave up a 2025 7th round pick. No brainer. They can also, take that salary and extend it out, make it a little more cap friendly. If he plays okay and they're not sure and they want to keep him around for one more season, there's a lot of ways they can do this. Honestly, guys, this is a no brainer. I mean, William Jackson steps into the building and he's the number one cornerback on this team, talent-wise. There's no way around it. You can make the argument, for Cam Sutton being the number one corner, but he's the slot corner. You don't want to move him to the outside. We've seen him struggle on the outside before. Let's leave Sutton in the slot. The other guys, James Pierre, Josh Jackson, they're just guys. They're just bottom of the roster corners, not very good. Akela Witherspoon benched his last two games, the one against Cleveland and then this past week against Philadelphia. Awful, horrendous, giving up chunk plays left and right. At this point, I don't even know if Akela Witherspoon makes it to the rest of the season with the Steelers. Levi Wallace is hurt. And if you follow this podcast at all, I'm not a big fan of Levi Wallace. I don't think he's very good. He's a second cornerback in the right system. I don't think Pittsburgh's the right system for him. And I don't think he's very good. So again, William Jackson III, CB1, as soon as he steps on the field. What are we going to get out of William Jackson in 2022? Who knows, guys? There's definitely talent there. I know he's 30 years old. Is he on the backside of his career? I mean, we haven't seen that much of him. What we have seen him hasn't been very good. But again, he hasn't been happy in Washington. He didn't feel like the defense suited him. He wanted out. So does that affect his play on the field? Probably. Best case scenario, it's a Joe Hayden all over again. I mean, he's never been as talented as Joe Hayden was in his prime, but I think he could probably mirror some of the production we got of Joe Hayden later on in his career when we signed him. At his very best, I mean, at his very worst, he's not a very good corner in a group of not very good corners anyway, so he fits right in. Honestly, no-brainer. Good deal for Omar Khan. It's to try to stabilize this cornerback position going forward. No brainer. I've said it a couple times now, sorry, but this is a good deal for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The other deal they made yesterday, it's been rumored for a couple of weeks now, and it finally happened. Chase Claypool dealt to the Chicago Bears for a second-round pick. The important thing here is it's Chicago's pick and not the Ravens pick they just acquired for, trading Roquan Smith to the Baltimore Ravens. That's going to be, folks, that's going to be the difference of 13 to 20 picks in terms of the second round, because we know the Ravens are making the playoffs. They're in first place. That's going to be a bottom half of the second round pick. The Bears, on the other hand, they just went through a fire sale. They traded Roquan Smith, like I mentioned. They traded Robert Quinn. They're not a very good team to begin with. So this is going to be top 5 second round, top 10 second round at the very worst. The second half of the season, the Chicago Bears are not going to be very good. They're going to be terrible on defense. They're 3-5 now, doing it with kind of smoke and mirrors. They just got thumped by the Dallas Cowboys pretty good, so we know where this team is headed. If you follow this podcast at all, Dave and I have talked about this for a few weeks now. We thought third round pick was the absolute ceiling for Chase Claypool. If you could get that, do it. If you heard the last podcast, I said I'll take a fourth round at this point. And we said it from day one. If you get offered a second round pick, jump, take it, trade him, drive him to the airport. See you later, Chase. It was nice knowing you. Not only did they get a second round pick, but they had a little bidding war. I guess the Packers, initially it was reported early on that it was almost a done deal. He was going to Green Bay. Chicago offered apparently the Ravens second round pick. And then when the Steelers hesitated in taking that, they felt like they had competition. So they offered their own second round pick and the Steelers jumped. This is a great job by Omar Khan, reading the room, using these two teams against each other in a little mini bidding war and getting a high-end second-round pick. Great job for the first-year GM. Obviously, he paid a lot of attention to Kevin Colbert and how he handled trading wide receivers. Getting third-round picks for Antonio Brown and Martavis Bryant was just miraculous, and this trumps it. Getting a second-round pick for Chase Claypool. Let's talk about Chase Claypool, the player, a little bit. Disappointing, up and down. It's the best way you can describe him over the last couple of seasons. He just hasn't been very good. He has trouble staying on his feet. He's not making the combative catches he did as a rookie. His productions, yardage-wise, has been pretty consistent, but touchdowns has just disappeared. His rookie season, 873 yards, 9 touchdowns. We were all going crazy. We all thought Chase Claypool, another genius wide receiver picked by the Pittsburgh Steelers, second round, all those receivers drafted before him, blah, blah, blah. Chase is better. Last couple of years, not so much. I mean, he had 860 yards receiving last year, but only 2 touchdowns as opposed to the 9 his rookie year. This year, up and down is the best way you can describe it. 311 yards, 1 touchdown. We know this Matt Canada offense is bad. How do you evaluate anybody on this offense with this kind of offensive coordinator? Who knows? But we do see him drop balls. We do see him not compete for catches. We do see him, and the Chicago Bears general manager described him as a fierce physical player and a fierce blocker. I don't know what he's looking at, but that's not what we're seeing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's not a very good blocker. He's not a combative catch guy. Early second round pick, man, you just jump, you take it and run. I don't know what else to say about this. Another positive to this is George Pickens becomes more a part of the offense, which is what we've been screaming about since week 1. I mean, this last game, 3 targets, 1 catch, no catches, I'm sorry. Come on. You got a super talent like George Pickens, and he's not getting any targets. Is Chase Claypool eating up some of that? Of course he is. Is that some of design Matt Canada's offense? We can get into Matt Canada's offense all day. But this opens up some opportunities for him. It opens up opportunities for Steven Sims, who we've trumpeted all season. This guy's elusive. He's great in the open field. You stick him in the slot, God forbid, you do some angle routes or some, slants with him, get him in the open field. Maybe you have something there. We'll see. George Pickens getting more targets. Maybe this offense starts playing better. You try anything at this point, and you hate to think, addition by subtraction, but that's pretty much what it amounts to here with Chase Claypool getting traded away. Good deal again. Omar Khan, first trade deadline. I put it on blog this week in a post, A-, A+ for the William Jackson. There's no downside. Like I said, you can get out of the contract pretty easy, and you get the possibility of a top corner anyway. And this Chase Claypool deal, could this bite him in the ass? Could Chase Claypool really flourish in Chicago? I suppose it's possible. I mean, Justin Fields scrambling, off script plays, deep balls down the field. Chase Claypool getting behind the secondary. We're going to see it. We're going to see some long touchdowns, and Twitter's going to go crazy. The Steelers made a mistake. But in the long term, Chase Claypool is not a number one receiver. He's probably not even a number two receiver. He's a goal ball third receiver. Hope to get something big. And if you can get a second-round pick, an early second-round pick, you can get a player with a much higher ceiling than that. And this team has tons of needs for 2023. We talk about it all the time. Offensive line, corner, quarterback possibly, running back possibly, edge. Might need another linebacker. Who knows? They need all the draft picks they can get, period. All right, so I touched on it a little bit. It's a little bit of a confusing trade deadline, right? They buy a player, they sell a player. What's their plans? Are they selling? Are they thinking about the future? They're giving up on the second half. Or are they bringing players in to make a run in the second half? Listen, don't get this twisted. Mike Tomlin believes and will always believe he can coach it up, turn this thing around, get back to 500, and make the playoffs. I have no doubt in my mind that's what his thinking is. That's why they brought in William Jackson. They want to stabilize the cornerback position. They get TJ Watt back, maybe even DeMonte Casey back in the second half. This defense starts playing like it did against the Bengals in week 1, and he thinks he can rip off 8 of 9, and this team can make the playoffs. Do I think that? No, I don't think that. I mean, I know the schedule's easy. All those players coming back. Now you've got Jackson. No. Now you say, well, you traded a top wide receiver on this team. How do you think they're buyers? And they think they're going to compete by trading off a key piece of the team. Well, we found out some of the reasoning to this. I don't know if you've ever followed Josina Anderson on Twitter. She's a great read. She's connected. She gets this stuff. She gets a lot of good stuff, is what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to quote her tweet from yesterday, like word for word. There's a lot of chatter on the Steelers potentially trading Chase Claypool leading in today. As is authorized a week ago, this internal impression is that Claypool felt he was a number one talent, while the Steelers feel ready to give rookie George Pickens an expanded role. So he thought he was the number one guy. He wanted more targets and catches, according to Josina Anderson. But the one even more damning than that was this tweet she had yesterday. Adding background, from what I am hearing and been hearing over the past few weeks, the Steelers moved on from what they felt was somewhat of a distraction behind the scenes. I'm told Claypool move was been in the table for at least 2 weeks per league source. So what Josina Anderson's saying is Chase Claypool had become a distraction. My partner David Cora brought this up in the last podcast. These players seem to be turning on each other. They're sniping a lot, especially the wide receiver room. You hear something from Deontay every week. You hear George Pickens a little bit, and you hear Chase Claypool a lot. Maybe this is a distraction the Steelers wanted to nip in the bud right now before it got out of control. There's no way the Steelers are punting on the season. Mike Tomlin would never punt on the season. They would never tank. Don't ever expect them to. As long as Mike Tomlin's here, that's never going to happen. The reason they traded Chase Claypool was because internally he had become a distraction. They wanted to move on from him. And like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, this becomes addition by subtraction in a lot of ways. They get rid of a problem in the locker room, apparently, and they open up more opportunities for the young receivers they have in the room already. Expect this team in the second half with a very weak schedule to stack some wins. Whether we like it or not, whether that's good for the Steelers going forward in 2023, I can argue is not. It's not a good thing. But the Steelers don't care. They're not thinking 2023 right now. Mike Tomlin's tunnel vision, he wants to win in 2022. Whether we want to believe it or not, that no losing seasons means a lot to Mike Tomlin, and it means a lot to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So they're going to go all out in the second half. They're going to get, like we said, TJ Watt back. So they play teams like the Carolina Panthers, New Orleans Saints, the Oakland Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders, Cleveland Browns, that's a lot of bad teams. They can expect even a split maybe with the Ravens. Bengals one more time. Bengals haven't been playing well either. They lost again. There's some winnable games there. Are they going to make the playoffs? Absolutely no. They're 1-5 in the AFC, 2-6 overall. This team's not making the playoffs. There's no way in hell. Don't let that enter your mind. Do they think they can make it? Absolutely they do. They're going to stack wins, and they're going to go from, this is my prediction going forward, they're going to go from a top 5 draft pick, currently 4th right now, as a matter of fact, to outside the top 10 by the time the season's over. I can see them winning 4 to 5 games in the second half. Big deal. You get to 7-10, 8-9, and whoopee, look at Mike Tomlin, turn it around. There's hope for 2023. It's not real. If you're a Steelers fan, that's not really what you want to see happen. Every win going forward is bad for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm not suggesting they tank, but the reality of it is every time they win, their draft pick lessens and the quality of player they can take in the first round lessens. They need a top tier offensive lineman or a top tier corner or a top tier edge rusher to add to this team at minimum in this draft. And the second round pick, it flows in every round also, because now you're talking about going from a top 5 second round pick and possibly 2 to mid-teens, mid-table. We know we've been drafting mid to late round since the Ben Roethlisberger draft. So this is not helping. They need premier talent. This team has a lot of holes. Every win going forward is just not good for this organization in the future. You don't want to say that. You don't want to say that tank. That word's not a good word. This is a proud franchise. I get it. But we have to be realistic. They're not making the playoffs. What good do the wins do them at this point? Does it carry over into 2023? I really don't think it does. Does it set an example? Possibly. You don't want losing to creep into minds. You don't want that to become acceptable. I get it. I don't ever see that happening with the Pittsburgh Steelers with a Mike Tomlin coach team. He's as many problems as I have with him and his coaching style and the coordinators he picks. This is a top 5 coach in the league. He will not allow losing the creep into this team. So I'm not really concerned about that. I want to see this team have a premier pick. Get a premier left tackle for the first time. How long has it been? I can't even remember the last time the Steelers had a top-notch left tackle to protect the quarterback. And we'll talk more about the draft in the coming weeks. I don't want to get too deep into it, but they could even entertain a quarterback. I mean, we're going to have 8 games to judge Kenny Pickett, albeit it looks like they're not going to fire Matt Canada. So how do we really evaluate him with this poorly constructed offense? I don't know. The turnovers are becoming an issue. Is quarterback off the table for the Steelers in the 2023 draft? Not in my eyes. Maybe in theirs, but not in mine. But we'll get into that in further podcasts. Guys, this is an A+, A- I gave him on my blog this week for Omar Khan in this trade deadline. Both trades, help this team in the short term and help the team in the long term. You can't ask for more than that at a trade deadline. The drop-off won't be that bad without Chase Claypool on offense. It's already bad. So giving Pickens more targets only helps the team. William Jackson, it can't get worse in the cornerback position. It really can't. I mean, the cornerback play this season's been horrendous. So he can only help. He can't hurt at this point, right? I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. Expect better things from the Pittsburgh Steelers, whether we like it or not, the second half. And we'll see where we go from there. I'll go over this more with my partner, David Korb. I know he's got a lot to say. He wishes he could be on. He couldn't be on today. We're probably going to go on Friday or Saturday. And, it's a bye week, so we have a little flexibility in when we go on. We'll talk about the second half of the season. We got some stuff planned, props and this and that for that podcast. It's going to be fun. Don't miss that one. Until then, you can follow me at SteelersSanct16 on Twitter. Email the show at daver@SteelersSanctuary.com, DAVER, that is. We really like to hear some feedback on the pod, on our YouTube page. Follow that. Give us some feedback on that. Tell us we suck. Tell us what you want to see. Tell us anything. We're always interested in getting better here. And that's about it. We'll talk this weekend. Thanks, and see you this weekend.